Hey, this is Connor here at the Chronicler, and today I'm doing something a bit different. I'm going to be talking about how I got back into reading. And this is for you, but it's really for me to kind of document this journey in video somewhere just to have in the future. And, if you're interested in seeing how I got back into reading a lot, this might be a fun video to watch. So, growing up, I did actually read a fair bit, and I do plan on making another video kind of talking about the book series that I read growing up. I never actually read Harry Potter, but it was more things like Garth Nix's Keys to the Kingdom, the Pendragon series, some other stuff. My sister was more of the traditional book reader, I'd say, in the family out of the two kids, compared to me. But we both read a lot of manga. I read a lot of like Dragon Ball Z. I have the Full Metal Alchemist manga. And something that we did a lot is we read a lot of the weekly Shonen Jump. I think in the US, though, it's like the monthly Shonen Jump. So for years on end, we had the subscription to the Shonen Jump magazine. If you're not familiar, they're kind of like this big. The Shonen Jump is like the biggest manga, for like manga publisher. I don't know if that's what you would call them, but they're like the biggest one, and they were really big back then. That's kind of when like Bleach, Naruto, and all those kind of like big three, One Piece were really starting to blow up and get big. And it was kind of cool because we were on the train before a lot of people because we were literally reading the manga, like the US translations. I don't know if it was like week to week as they were getting translated or month to month as they're getting translated, but it was so fun to get these magazines in every month and read them and just see what's going on, and kind of that suspense would keep rolling. And the rotation in the Shonen Jump would rotate too. So there'd be a lot of new things that would come and go. Like we'd see JoJo sometime, like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Bobobo, Bobobo, just a bunch of crazy things that we were exposed to growing up. And for years on end, we would read this magazine. I would hold on to them in my closet, in my bedroom closet growing up. I had two stacks that were probably like 4 feet tall at least, maybe even like 5 feet tall of these magazines. And then like another third stack that was growing. But at a certain point, I think when I was like late high school or like university, I needed to clear out some space. There was like a move going on. So unfortunately, I recycled like all of those Shonen Jump magazines, which was a tragedy. Because they're really nostalgic for me. I'm sure, Ariel, if you're watching this, you know what I'm talking about. Tons of nostalgia there. And to kind of get why we started reading Shonen Jump is that we both kind of liked Yu-Gi-Oh cards growing up. And I remember this like very keenly in my mind. We went to like Safeway, and there was a magazine part in Safeway on the kind of the bottom shelf. And we went and we picked it up, and it had like promo Yu-Gi-Oh cards in it. So we convinced our mom to like buy the magazine for us. It was like $5. And from there, we kind of got hooked onto the Shonen Jump and eventually got on the subscription. And like I said, years on end, we were subscribed to that thing. So that really turned Ariel and I, my sister, into consistent manga readers. And for a long time, it was mostly manga that I was reading. But we'd also read like traditional comics like Foxtrot and Calvin and Hobbes. Those were really the big ones in our household. I think fairly early on, probably around like middle school and definitely into high school, assigned reading was pretty big. Even early, like elementary, it was big. But definitely middle school through high school, I didn't really read anything outside of manga or comics for like personal enjoyment. Not a lot anyway that I can remember. Definitely not in high school. I really got into film. I thought about going into film for like schooling. Ultimately didn't do that, but I was really into film. I was kind of the film guy. I ran a film club at our high school where at lunchtime we'd watch movies, so that was fun. And that kind of took me out of the reading completely. I was also really, really into video games during this time. So those were my main two forms of entertainment, like consumption. So yeah, no traditional books really at all during that time besides assigned reading. And I think this is pretty common for a lot of people. When you're assigned reading for school, it makes the process less enjoyable because it's something that you're forced to do. And there are some good books that I read during this time, like Siddhartha. Loved that book. I need to go back and read it. It's been forever. But a lot of them, I just kind of spark notes it and call it a day. Wouldn't put in the effort, and I don't know, I got by with really good grades, so it seemed to work out for me for long enough. And then in university, I didn't really read at all until later, which we'll get to for traditional books. But I would say that I hadn't read manga a lot lately, and my anime consumption definitely was dying down. Until freshman year of university, I met my Hawaiian friends, Keenan, Adam, and then CJ. You guys kind of, if you're watching this, I don't know how you'd get a hold of it, but if you're watching it, you definitely put me really hard back onto the anime track. Those dudes were so into anime. They loved it so much, and they introduced me to a lot of new anime. And the main one was Neon Genesis Evangelion. I kind of had this like pantheon of media that I would say that like affect me in a major way, or like my favorite things of all time. And Evangelion is like right on that pantheon of all-timers for me. So that introduced me to a whole new spectrum of anime and stuff, a lot darker, a lot more adult focused. And on my own, I went kind of exploring manga again. And what I discovered was Berserk. And they had watched Berserk, but they didn't really, or they had read Berserk, but they didn't really like put me onto it. I discovered Berserk on my own since they had kind of reintroduced me to manga and anime consumption. And Berserk is on my pantheon too. Berserk is my favorite piece of fictional media ever written, ever created. It is my favorite thing. Absolutely love Berserk. And just some other anime that I got into during the time, because this anime and manga and reading actually is all kind of tied in together pretty closely for me. Stuff like Oyasumi Punpun, I read that after I read Berserk. Really good, really dark, something that manga-wise, completely different than what I had read before. And then also got into kind of like Madoka Magica and stuff. So after that, kind of went sophomore year, kind of separated from those guys, still hung out with them and talked to them, but we were all in like the same dorm together, and then we split up. We weren't roommates, but we were all in the same dorm building. After that, we all went to live our separate ways, and then I started making a bunch of new friends also, but I kept that love, that newfound love again, that resurgence of love for anime and manga, and I started introducing it to a lot more new people, like my great friend Luke, Chloe. I met Sean later on, who also loved anime and manga, so we kind of introduced stuff to each other. And I really spread that love of Berserk, Eva, Madoka to a lot of people. And to this day, they're still my great friends, and they all are way more into anime and manga now than before. So I kind of infected a lot of people and turned them into slight weebs, I'll say. So for a while, it was mostly video games again when I had any free time at all. I studied computer science in university, and I was really busy. I was programming a lot, and I feel like just programming, it's not exactly you reading like a book, but it just burned me out from like looking at text. I'd rather be playing a game in my free time or partying with friends or something like that. So not a lot of reading happened for quite a while there until kind of Game of Thrones. So near the end of my run at university, the Game of Thrones show was coming to an end, and it ended, and it was like really disappointing, the ending. And I was like, wow, what do I do now? That was kind of my big fantasy thing that I'd been consuming for a long time. And I absolutely love fantasy. I watched Lord of the Rings a ton growing up, and like Star Wars, and that just gave me this like love for these epic stories and fantasy and space operas. So now that Game of Thrones had left my life, and on a bitter note, I was like, where do I go from here? What do I consume next? And I thought about books. I'm like, well, obviously there's the source material for Game of Thrones, but there's probably a lot of other cool things there that I haven't consumed. Epic fantasy stories and space operas that are just the best stuff ever that I haven't really touched yet. And I had been so out of like the adult reading space for so long that it seemed like an untapped, like well of potential for great media and stories and characters to meet for the first time and consume and hopefully put on my pantheon. And, that did happen. So what happened is I talked to my friend Sean, and Sean is like, he was kind of the biggest reader, I'd say, among our friend group. He had read the most fantasy stuff, definitely. I think during like his time growing up and kind of in university, he'd go and like do these reading sprees, and he just read a lot growing up. So he put us all into the Cosmere. He lived with a bunch of my friends in this place we called 685, because the address had like 685 in it, but we just referred to that household as 685. And there was a bunch of guys in there, and he put us all onto the Cosmere, And specifically, initially, he put me onto Mistborn. So during the very end of my run at university, I started reading The Final Empire, the first Mistborn book, on my phone. And then I finished the first book, I think, on my phone. Or at some point, I bought a Kindle e-reader. I got a Kindle Paperwhite. And I read that first Mistborn trilogy. And I was like, wow, this is awesome. The second book wasn't my favorite. The first book was really good. Second book was good enough to make me keep reading. And then the third book, I was like, holy shit, this is amazing. This is absolutely what I'm looking for. I want more of this. So then I graduated, and I started reading Stormlight Archive. And during that I had like a small buffer period between my first job and school, like I think 2 or 3 months. And, my first like real job out of university. During that buffer period, I read Stormlight, and I read Way of Kings, loved it. The scope was so much bigger than Mistborn, was absolutely falling in love with the Cosmere and reading Sanderson. Read Words of Radiance. Words of Radiance is one of my all-time favorite books, absolutely phenomenal. Then I read Edge Dancer, and Edge Dancer took me longer to read than I think Words of Radiance did. Words of Radiance, I remember exactly. I was helping my family move houses, and we all got like a really nasty flu. We were like boiling, just absolutely, like I lost like 10 pounds. And I read Words of Radiance just nonstop during that time when I was sick. I was either resting, helping move, or reading during that time. That was all that was happening. So I burned through Words of Radiance, and then I got to Edge Dancer, and I was like, wow, this is not my favorite thing ever. This is okay. Lift is not my favorite character. I'll just say that. Maybe she'll grow on me again. So I got through that, and then I started reading Oathbringer. I think I took a small break, and then I started reading Oathbringer. And for some reason, I can't get through Oathbringer. I have read Oathbringer, I think, like 2 or 3 times now. Tried to read it 2 or 3 times now. And I've hit the 60 to 70% mark every single time, and then I just put the book down. And I know people say it has, like, the best Sanderlanche, and I've hit that Sanderlanche before. I know some of the characters, what happens there, and I just put the book down. I don't know why. It is kind of more of a slog, I think, than the other 2 books at some points, but yeah, for some reason, Oathbringer put me on the permanent reading hiatus for quite a while. This was like 2019, 2020. So that killed my momentum for reading completely, and I don't know why. And then I tried to read it again, like maybe 2021. Once again, like hit that 60, 70% mark, put it down, couldn't get through it. I was moving quite a bit during this time, moved back down to California for my job, and kind of just got busy with work and gaming and, pandemic times. So was on the reading hiatus again. Wasn't reading a lot for quite a while. And then randomly in like 2024, I still had like an e-reader. I had like a Kindle, was watching YouTube. I have another YouTube channel where I do video games, and I do very in-depth videos there. I've never like linked it out to this channel, but maybe I'll link it in this one. I do very like in-depth video game coverage there. And I was going to talk about the Stalker video game series. I was watching YouTube, watching the YouTuber Skill Up, very big video game YouTuber, just randomly watching him. He was talking about this game Pacific Drive. And he mentioned the book Roadside Picnic in there, which is like the inspiration for the Stalker games. It influenced and inspired this Pacific Drive game. And there's even a film based on Roadside Picnic. So I thought, what the heck? I haven't read for like probably 3 years at this point, maybe 2.5 to 3 years, like seriously. And I decided, I need to kind of break free, I think, of the Sanderson gravity. The Sanderson gravity had pulled me in completely, engulfed me as a reader. And I thought, I want to be more well-read. I still want to read a lot. I want to get back into reading seriously. So I went and I read Roadside Picnic. Love that book. Something so different from Sanderson. And I had never read like any Russian sci-fi thing before. So it was totally different from anything that I had read. Read it, loved it, put me on the sci-fi kick. Just started consuming some sci-fi books, upgraded from a Kindle to a Kobo Libra Color, and then I've just been reading a lot more since then, and I don't intend to stop. I kind of set goals, on Goodreads or whatever now, just very vague goals of roughly one book a month, hopefully more, to get through, to keep a good pace, keep that momentum going, and it's been going great since then. Absolutely have loved being back in the reading community. I have kind of put manga on a hiatus for now. If you can see back here, actually, these are all the Berserks. That's like all of Vagabond. I have like 20th Century Boys right here. So I have a lot of manga back there. This shelf is like all my girlfriend's manga and my manga, mostly her stuff. And I do need to read that, and I'm going to talk about manga and stuff on this channel as well. So traditional reading has kind of replaced my manga reading completely, but I'll get around back to that. But I'm happy that I've like rebuilt this consistent reading habit. It's something that's really enjoyable for me, and I still love games and film and stuff, but now I kind of really enjoy getting my good stories and characters from books at the time. And kind of for gaming, I get gameplay there. So I kind of get all my things that I'm looking for in different ways right now, as far as like enjoyment. But it's great to be back in the reading community. It's great to be part of this booktube thing. I love seeing comments from people. And now that I've been back in the reading thing, I actually wanted to kind of infect all my friends. I infected them before with kind of the anime and manga stuff. But now I'm like, hey guys, let's all really get back onto reading and sharing these stories and these characters that we read and encounter with each other to spread this enjoyment, because it helps you, just encourages you to read more. So I have a little book club that I run called the Band of the Book, named after, Berserk, the Band of the Hawk. I got my Femto shirt on right here. But yeah, I've got the Band of the Book, where it's a book club, but the purpose of the book club is that we actually don't read, none of us really read the same book. We'll do a buddy read here and there that somebody will pitch, and then a few people will join on it. But the intent of it is not for everybody to read the same thing. It's a meeting place for us to gather once a month to share the books and now all the media that we consume, to kind of say our favorite things, what we enjoyed, what we didn't like with each other. So that way people can hear about it, and it kind of pushes them to, read more, watch more, play more, and share these experiences, these stories, these characters with each other to really encourage and promote this just habit of having a good time and encountering these great stories. So it's been going great. Really like this booktube thing I've been doing, and just keeping it casual, doing kind of conversations like this. So that's about it for this video, I think. It was actually pretty easy to record this one. It's also a good place for me to kind of practice my just speaking skills just off the cuff. My other YouTube channel is a lot more heavily scripted. So this is good for just organic conversations. So yeah, that's it. I would love in the comments down below to hear how you got back into reading, or what your experiences are like throughout life, if you went through kind of a phase like me where read a lot when you're younger, kind of died down and then picked it back up later in life, or if you're trying to get back into reading, what kind of interests you in the space. That's going to wrap it up here. Please leave a thumbs up and maybe subscribe if you liked watching this one. Otherwise, have a good one.